Hello and welcome to the weekend edition of News Express, exclusively brought to you by Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. It's been quite a busy business week, from the MPC meeting to the president's stoppage of the planned sale or privatization of the Nigeria Commodity Exchange. We also saw the release of $500 million by Nigeria to redeem the 2020 Eurobond, which matured this month. That's just, a few of the stories that Business AM had been tracking this week, a few of the developing stories that we've seen, in the course of this week. So basically, it's been a very busy week, and Business AM is tracking all of these stories and more. I'm bringing in the publisher, Business AM, Mr. Philip Isakwa, to join me for conversations. Good morning, Mr. Philip.
Yeah, good morning, Rachel. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm good. A very busy week, like you've said in your intro.
Right.
The two things you mentioned, the stoppage of the privatization of the commodities exchange, the 500 million naira, redemption of Eurobond, and quite a number at the MPC meeting. Of course, it came, and went on Tuesday. And the good thing, we made a good call. If you saw the paper on Monday, we talked about analysts saying that rates will be held static, and that really happened.
Yes.
And then so many other things. If you go to the World Economic Forum, has been meeting, and a number of things have been coming out from that end of the world. It's always always a winter meeting, and this time with COVID, it hasn't held the way it used to hold. But a number of things have come up from there. Good that the AFDB president was there. Additional was there, and did talk about a few things which we have been following. And then some on the African stage, you're looking at some things that we're following on technology, the Africa's technology ecosystem. And then there was a rating of banks across Africa, the top 100 banks that came out, and how we've been following that. We'll look to follow that in the next edition, about Nigerian banks doing pretty well on the West Africa and Central Africa stage, dominating that the sub-region. So quite a lot, but let us dive into the CBN held rates static, because like we said, the Monetary Policy Committee hasn't had room, to behave like most of its counterparts in other parts of the world, to losing grip on rates. But and we know why that is so. Inflation is always troubling, managing inflation, managing interest rates, managing forex. A country that depends largely on imports, and it's not able to find the funding at a time when crude oil prices were going down, and demand for crude oil at some point even went negative. So it's been a tough one. So they couldn't do anything. They couldn't do otherwise. But we have to look forward. What the analysts saying? Analysts have been telling us that following that meeting, there's one bullish analyst who told us that we are likely to see a central bank, that will probably resort to unconventional tools to create, but that will depend on the atmosphere and what they see around them, in terms of the inflation is still 15.75%. There's talk that inflation, for when the next inflation numbers come out, for January that it might not have eased. The Central Bank of Nigeria has a target of 6 to 9, that single-digit rates, which it has not been able to successfully attain over the years in the last 5 years or so. But they are saying that across the world, central banks, did embrace a looser monetary policy, to defend their different economies, but without a breathing space, room to breathe, the Central Bank of Nigeria couldn't play in that waters. If you do a rate cut, which means allowing a lot of money to come into the system, that will also have pressure, trying to curb inflation, and then you're losing rates, and then all you see, interest rates inflation will fight harder. And so wasn't a surprise, what happened, but they say the unconventional, one analyst said the unconventional way to look at it is that if the CBN decides to go unconventional, this could include tweaking that's the LDR, loan to deposit ratio, liquidity ratio, and cash reserve ratio, that the CBN could decide to do all of that, to tweak any or a combination of those three areas, while not disturbing a monetary policy rate as such. So that's what we are seeing. That's what we're hearing, and we don't know where we are going to next. So it's quite a number of things that came out as a result of that meeting. You heard that the amount of loans that were given, banking system credit, was really was impressive. In terms of credit, there was a credit spike in 30 days between November and December 2020. Those numbers came out as they released the communique on the MPC meeting to the tune of 774.3 billion naira in 3 days, and then that was attributed to rising minimum lending LDR, loan to deposit ratio, set by the central bank over time. Again, looking generally, you've heard you've heard the situation to do with VAT. Recall that in 2019, there was what we call the raising of VAT from 5% to 7.5%, if you recall, and then that took effect in 2020, if you recall. And what we have seen is that the numbers that have come out in 2020 suggest that the VAT pulled in 1.53 trillion. We've been following that as well during the week. 1.53 trillion naira in 2020. But again, you look at it from the context of the pandemic. There was a lockdown, in between I think March, April, May. The lockdown started in March, and went on for some time. But that notwithstanding, VAT was still high. Two things. One is that because VAT was raised from 5 to 7.5%, so a 2.5% upward climb in terms of what is. So even if it dropped in terms of the purchases that happened during the 2020, that the fact that it was, the rate was higher, than it was in 2019, could have meant more money coming in.
Right.
So that's something that we've been following. We also there are so many other things that we have seen. Again, you have the situation that we want to do with the funding structure for power distribution, power companies in the country, where you have a TTN top official, calling out discourse, over we've had, Richard, you've been saying this. We've had a lot of trouble or challenges in the power sector.
Right.
But I think generation has been good, but they've had problems with distribution. First there was talk about TCN, the transmission company of Nigeria, not being able not having the facility or the willing facility to will what's it called will power, to homes or to the discos to distribute, But we also have had challenges to do with financing, of discos not being able to meet obligations to do with, for instance, metering and a few other things. So one CCN chief, one of the top officials of CCN, said no, the problem is actually with discos. Discos funding structure, it's such that they borrowed money short-term money and using short-term money to finance long-term development of infrastructure, which is very, very dangerous. Most bankers most finance people would tell you that without asking for a fee. So this is what has happened. Of course, we can look at what's going on in Davos. The World Economic Forum has been meeting, and Nigeria's and AFDB president, Nigerian and AFDB president, Akinwumi Adesina, has been there, challenging the world, on but he's focusing on the climate change has been an issue, a global issue. Africa is believed to bear the brunt of this, even though many will say that it is not what you call it is not responsible for a lot of the things that have led to climate change, and so I feel Adesina has been challenging the global, the rich nations who pledged some years ago that they will bring out $100 billion, yearly, to finance climate change, But that hasn't been coming, and it was there. To quote him, it is time for developed countries to meet the $100 billion per year in climate finance promised to developing countries.
Right.
So at a forum like that, he was able to challenge. That is something that is really, really top topic.
All right, Mr. Philip.
Climate change, climate finance, and all the rest.
Just before I let you go, now in just 1 minute, because we're short for time, give us a preview of headlines for next week's edition of the paper.
Well, next week you're likely to see us look at what we call the state of states. In terms of transparency, we're looking at what's going on with transparency, the management of the accounts of states. And then of course we'll look at the market. There's a lot on technology. There'll be a lot on energy. A lot happening in the energy space. Which we're going to focus on. Of course, we'll be focusing on agriculture as well. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Philip, for doing this with me today. I'll get back to you on Monday, of course, for the Week Starter edition. Have a nice day.
And you too. Thank you.
And that was Mr. Philip, the publisher Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper.